Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Fox, and today I want to talk about how weapon handling is a direct improvement on the DPS of basically any weapon build that you can put together. I'm going to use the FAMAS as an example today, as the FAMAS is actually the highest burst DPS weapon, or AR specifically, in the game, outside of exotics with their talents procced. So just from a base damage level for high-end weapons, the FAMAS is basically the top of the pile in the AR pool. But the way that Massive balance the weapon, like they do a lot of their weapons, is the handling is pretty poor on it. So if you want to land your shots from range or go for consistent headshots or have a snappy reload, these things are usually a little bit out of reach with the FAMAS. But what if there was a build that you could have all of the main damage talents and, very, very similar crit and non-crit numbers to your sort of traditional AR build, but also have very good reload speed, very good accuracy and stability on a weapon that kicks as hard as the FAMAS? This means that you're going to have one of the best burst DPS weapons in the game, combined with the ability to land more of your shots, which does directly equate to a DPS game. So what we'll do in the usual format of the video is I'm going to go through the build itself. I'll show you the stats. I'm going to quickly demonstrate in the firing range how the weapon works with and without the handling that I've improved or included on the build, and then we will load solo queue into a conflict game so I can fully demonstrate the capabilities of the build. Let's get started. Okay, so with this build we have the three hallmarks of what I think makes a good FAMAS build, which is first of all weapon damage with the combination of Optimist, Obliterate and Wicked. So we have three separate damage talents on this build which work very well, especially when combined with all the multiplicative bonuses we have on the build. We have very high survivability with the use of 4 blues and the EMP sticky bomb, which I'll come to shortly as to how that factors into survivability. And finally, we have the improved weapon handling through the second Petrov, giving us 10% weapon handling, and on the weapon itself, the 5% handling scope. So that's 15% there. If you run it with Gunner, you can have 25%. Also, I just want to quickly talk about this skin. I don't know if any of you guys have gotten this skin yet. I forget where I got this from. I think it was season 2 or 3 maybe, but this skin is awesome. I absolutely love how this makes the FAMAS look. It reminds me of the Red Death from Destiny 1, if anybody played or remembered that. Look at that, all the notches on there to show how many kills it's got. That's pretty cool. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, I feel that this build has hit all three of those. Weapon handling, or weapon usability we'll call it, because handling does actually cover 4 total stats. Swap speed, reload speed, stability and accuracy. And then of course the extra damage on the survivability on the build as well. So what we'll do is we'll start from top to bottom. I'll quickly explain the reason I've gone for the pieces I have, starting with the specialisation and moving down to the skills. I will then show you my stats and then quickly demonstrate, as I said before, the difference with the 15% versus not having the 15% and instead having coders on this build, which would make it very meta. And then we'll come to that conflict gameplay, which I will leave unedited for you all so you can see just how well the build performs and where it falls short, as all builds in the game have their strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, let's get started. We're looking at Gunner for this particular build. Now, Gunner has always been my personal favourite specialisation for PvP. I appreciate that Firewall offers us a better grenade, a better armour kit definitely, and a better shield, and that makes it very, very potent in PvP, and rightfully so. It deserves its place at the #1 spot. But Gunner has a lot of passives that really enhance builds that use either Obliterate or Optimist. As it gives us loads of useful features. So just to quickly list a few of them, we have the 50% faster reload every third reload. This is a direct DPS increase, as the shorter time you spend reloading, which unfortunately is quite frequent with the 900 rounds per minute FAMAS, the more time you're actually engaged in a fight. We gain 5% rate of fire on kill, which also directly equates to a DPS increase. We gain 10% additional weapon handling whilst stationary or in cover, which you will sometimes be, so that's always nice for that slightly quicker reload. You gain a very good foam grenade that is either going to flush an enemy out of cover so you can kill them, or just glue them to the floor so once again they stick out of cover, meaning you can kill them. We have an armor kit that gives us 30% bonus armor in PvP for 10 seconds, I believe. So this is very powerful for just surviving for longer. It's not as good as the Firewall one, but it is pretty powerful. We have 10% of our own ammo reserves returned to us every minute, and 5% of our teammates return to them. Fantastic for those longer Dark Zone runs. It's always good to have one person on Gunner. And then we have some very useful mods as well for our EMP jammer, and if you decide to use the Banshee Pulse, essentially anything in that skill line you can use. As you can see on the right there, the Gunner mods, which are 50% better than the max mods outside of Gunner. So that's why we're using that. The FAMAS we're using, for the reasons we explained at the beginning, is the highest burst DPS AR in the game, outside of exotics. Mine is rolled to max weapon damage, or assault rifle damage should I say, and max damage to targets out of cover. It's the biggest multiplicative stat you can get on your weapon, so it is the only one you should ever consider using outside of a status damage build where damage to armor is actually better. And instead of using In Sync, which I appreciate is a meta talent, I really wanted to run Optimist alongside Obliterate, and I'll come to that shortly. I don't need to worry about using a shield to proc In Sync. I can just fire my gun, and it's free damage the lower the ammo in my magazine becomes. And of course, as a 900 rounds per minute weapon, that happens quite frequently, so very, very good weapon. Now you'll notice here that my reload speed is 1.9 seconds. There is no assault rifle in the game that has a reload speed of 1.9 seconds without being buffed. They're all over 2 seconds, and I think this is 2.2 or 3 by default. So yeah, you know, we're shaving loads of time off of that reload speed as well, which is very noticeable as you'll see in the gameplay. Secondary weapons, entirely your decision. I mean, honestly, use whichever secondary you want. I like the Nemesis for its capability to one-shot, even on a 4-blue build if you headshot crit. Very, very powerful, particularly in the Dark Zone. The only 2 pistols you should ever really consider using on any DPS build is the named card for the +1 skill tier with finisher rolled, or just the perfect finisher, which is probably better to be fair, because the Magnum, which this is based on, hits incredibly hard, and you can give yourself tons of additional crit chance and crit damage just for swapping to this when somebody is low, downing, and subsequently killing them. So yeah, the Orbit or the card with finisher are the only 2 choices in my opinion. So just before we go through the individual pieces, for those of you that don't know, the way to achieve the absolute highest amount of body shot damage, we're not talking about headshot here, with the 6-piece combo would be your weapon brand set, which is Fenris, would be a Seska and a Grippo for the crit chance and crit damage. It would be Foxes and Contractors for the multiplicative damage to armor and damage to targets out of cover. And then the 6th and final piece would be either Providence if you're going to hit headshots, or more popular is Coyotes, just because it gives you 10% additional chance and damage. You can really buff your stats. That 6 combo is just the highest damaging combo in the game, regardless of, you know, how many blues or reds you have on the build. That combo just achieves more than even the double walker. Yeah, so for body shot damage, that is the way to do it. The reason that I haven't gone for Coyotes on this build is that we are using Obliterate. So my chest talent is Obliterate, which means critical hits increase total weapon damage by 1% for 5 seconds. And this does stack up to 25 times. So this is 25% multiplicative damage, really just for emptying about a mag and a half's worth it usually takes to ramp this up. Now if you're running Coyotes, you're going to be at 50% crit damage, and it's pointless being at crit chance, and it's pointless going to 60% because then you're not even gaining the benefit of Coyotes anyway. So that means that at the 15 to 25 meter range, yes, you'll be at the 60%, therefore maximizing how frequently Obliterate procs. But a lot of the time people will rush you with a Lady Death or a shotgun, and as a result you'll just be at 50%. So yes, Obliterate will still ramp up quite nicely, and you have the additional 25% crit dam from Coyotes, but Obliterate buffs both base damage and crit damage. And you know, I just want it to be at the 60% all of the time, so I don't have to worry about any range or anything like that. I just want to be at 60% flat. So that means that Coyotes wasn't a great choice for me. That leaves me with a 6th open slot that could be something like Providence for the headshot damage, Walker for the extra damage for my weapon and for my sniper and pistol as well. But ultimately I opted to go for the Petrov because this gives us the 10% weapon handling. Now that may seem like a strange choice to run the double Petrov, but we're always going to run Contractors because they are just the best gloves in the game. You should never have any other gloves here on a high-end build that is primarily based around DPS. So the second Petrov, combined with the 5% scope that I run on the weapon, gives me 15% additional handling and 25% on the weapon, and this equates to a much better experience. The rest of my build is spec purely into crit chance and crit damage, so you see the Grupo Mas that I have here with a 15% brand set bonus, rolled exactly as that, crit chance, crit damage. The chest is one of my 2 reds, so I always recommend keeping the chest and the backpack red if you can, because then you have less to worry about rolling to get it correct. I've just got Obliterate on here, of course, with crit chance, crit damage. Seska for the 10% crit chance, once again rolled in the same way, but this is rolled to armor. Of course we have the Foxes and the Contractors, one is rolled to crit damage and one is rolled to crit chance. Both of these offer a multiplicative bonus that stack very well with each other and with the rest of your build. And finally we have the Petrov with Wicked. Now the reason I've gone for Wicked is I didn't want Vigilance, as yes, it gives 25% flat damage. Very, very powerful talent, but as soon as you get shot, you lose it. And as we're not using a shield on this build, which usually preserves your vigilance, I wanted to go for a talent that could last longer. We also have options like Companion, but that's only 15%, so the next best thing for me was Wicked, and as we're going to be using the EMP Sticky Bomb for survivability on this build, it is an obvious choice. So Wicked, just for applying a status effect, which works off of enemy skills as well with the Jammer, means that we gain a multiplicative 18% damage bonus that, yes, is less than Vigilance, but it lasts for 20 seconds. Vigilance lasts right up until you get shot, and then you have to wait 3 or 4 seconds for it to come back. It's just too sporadic, it's too sort of all over the place for it to be viable in a lot of PvP builds that have this much armor, where you're going to be kind of at the front of the pack. So with Wicked on there as well, we're utilising the EMP Sticky Bomb. For those of you that don't know, this has multiple benefits, and the reason that it is one of the best PvP skills in the game is for its capability to break any shield, even a tier 6 Bulwark that, yes, has Vanguard procced, it will even break that. That's how powerful the EMP is on this. But maybe more importantly, it creates a stagger effect. If you fire this at somebody's feet, you don't need to worry about aiming down sights and taking your time. Just hip fire at somebody's feet, you will stagger them regardless of their build, unless they have Sawyers on, of course. This means that you just get free damage, you proc your Wicked, you can shoot them whilst they can't shoot you, and the disrupt lasts roughly 2 to 3 times longer than the second skill that we're using, which is the EMP Jammer. This is purely here for proccing Wicked if we don't have it up, but more importantly it's there for breaking down skills, as there are so many status players in the game at the moment that love sitting behind their hives and their mortar turrets and all the nonsense that nobody likes to see. This is just going to break them down every time, proc your Wicked, and then you can save your Sticky Bomb for your 1v1s where you need to get that advantage by staggering them. So the way that I've got this build spec'd out is 60% crit chance, and then I've gone for 12% crit mods, 3 of them in total. That means that my stats are as follows. So the base damage with 4 blues on the build is 31,750, but of course that's not taking into account any of the multiplicative damage bonuses that we have. My crit chance is at 59.1. I just need to do a few more optimizations on my back and chest to hit 60, which is very important. You really don't want to be lower than, well, I mean, there's no benchmark figure here. I mean, I suppose lower than 50 would be definitely terrible for Obliterate, but you just want to be as close to 60 as possible. Prioritize crit chance over crit damage until you hit it. Use your weapon mods first for crit chance, and then you want to ideally be using the crit dam mods on your gear, as they're much larger than the ones on the weapons. As a result of that, I have been able to get my crit damage to 154, which is still very respectable, considering we're running an interesting variant. Headshot damage is default, armor damage is 8% from the contractors, health damage is irrelevant because PvP that hardly comes into play at all. Yes, it's good against enemy skills, but they die very quickly from this build, so that's really not important. And we do have 2 EMPs, remember. Doesn't show it here, but we also have 18% damage to targets out of cover from the Foxes and from the weapon itself. The most powerful and best stat in the game for PvP, so definitely want to spec that as I have. And then, whilst it isn't showing it correctly here, since they updated it, weapon handling is now at a 1-for-1 ratio, all 4 of these stats. Reload, accuracy, stability, weapon swap speed. Because I'm stood still on Gunner with the 10%, these will all be at 25%. When I'm not stood still, they will all be at 15%. So lots of reasons to use the extra handling on there. It really does make a big difference. Handling stats are as follows. We're currently at 1.474 million armor from the 4 blues, which is where we get all our survivability from, and 10% of that comes back to us each kill. Also very good in the dark zone, just to kill a few red bars and get some armor back. Max health is just based on a maxed out watch level, and then everything else is the same. This is just based on my specialization and a maxed out watch level. So that's the build just there. As I say, I know it's a bit of an interesting combination with Wicked, the double EMP, the double Petrov, and an Optimus FAMAS. I know that's a bit of a combination you don't see too often, but the combination of Optimus, Wicked, and Obliterate is, even on a 4 blue build, unbelievable. You will melt people, and the additional handling means that you can just laser them down from pretty much any range. What I'll now do is demonstrate the difference between handling versus no handling, and then we will load into that game. So a nice simple test that I'm going to perform here. For those of you that have been with my channel for a while, you would have seen me do this before anyway, but I'm simply going to fire my FAMAS into the wall just here to demonstrate without any recoil control with it. I'm just going to hold down my left trigger, zoom in and just see where it goes, and then I'll do the same without the handling. So at the moment we have 25% weapon handling on this. Let's see what the recoil direction looks like. Watch the bloom as well. That's the crosshair, the white dot right in the center. Watch how much that pings out from the middle, as stability is your recoil control, and then accuracy is the total bloom cone, so how far out that white dot can go. But let's see how tight it is with the recoil. Okay, so that seems quite bad, and don't forget that the FAMAS does have a very poor recoil direction, you know, compared to a FAL, which would probably go from about here to about here, about half the length, and completely vertical. Yes, the FAMAS is still an unruly beast, but if you look at this bullet spread, it's all very consistent, and it's nearly vertical. Yes, it's about 1 o'clock versus perfectly vertical. What we'll now do is quickly change to a different build with, well, I say a different build, we'll use the same weapon on a build that has no weapon handling built in. Let's check that out. Okay, so what I've done here is just swapped to my usual spotter build. I've taken the scope off of the weapon. As you can see, the long optics rail is empty. We don't have gunner for the extra handling, and we don't have any other handling stats on here as well. So let's just see the difference. This is basically a base FAMAS, how it would feel on most builds. I'm going to try and align that as close to the possible as the base of this one. So whilst the first one may have seemed bad, look at the difference. You see this, the bullet drop here is quite a fair bit wider compared to this one here. So this is nice and tight. This one is, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It just keeps on going up and up and up. And when you're trying to control that from range, it's not ideal. Yes, the one on the left isn't as good as I say, a FAL or a carbine, but it's so much tighter. It's more vertical. This sort of banks a bit more off to the side. And the recoil is much higher. The accuracy is worse because there's a lot more gap between the bullets, and it just makes the FAMAS in general, because of this poor recoil, quite unusable at range. As I'm about to demonstrate the conflict gameplay, just using that 15% weapon handling or 25% when you stood still is phenomenal. So let's get loaded into that game and we'll see how it all plays out.
For your reinforcements are spent.
Okay, so it looks like we are on Capital Ruins. Let's see how we get on. I did see a lot of status in the other team. I think they have a couple of Ridgeways guys and a full-on status build. So if we get hit by a sticky bomb, that is one of the weaknesses of this build. We're not using a booster hive. Again, for those of you that watch my previous PvP videos, how to sort of fully and correctly spec your teams, you should always have one person on a booster hive, and we don't. So this might potentially be a bit dangerous. This guy saw me, but I'm going to get the early. Early shot on him. That reload speed, it's just a joy to use. Guy behind me.
Rogue defender drone detected.
Be careful, there's also going to be guys. Where did he go? There he is, I see you. So look at that sort of consistency from range. Yes, it still kicks a little bit, but don't forget we are taking advantage of massive amounts of burst DPS, you know, to make up for that. It's just an absolute laser. And this is 4 blues as well, and it just decimates. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the FAMAS. I appreciate that on PC it might be easy to use, but I know on console, particularly for players like me that are pretty average at PvP, it can be a bit of a mule. Let's get the stagger on him, knock him out of cover. As if.
Immediate medical assistance needed.
Unfortunately, this is quite common in. I notice it a lot in EU servers, less in US, but you will find a lot of sort of quite low skill players just sitting in cover using sticky bombs and stingers. It's a very cheap way to get kills and a very easy way because Massive refuse to nerf status. So you will notice that quite a lot, unfortunately. But that's why, as I say, the booster hive is very powerful at preventing that. Trying to get his headshot on the back there, but again, like, you see the stability of it. Nice fast reload. Every third reload is even faster. And now that I've just popped that fast reload, what I can do is fire, reload, which is already quick, 1.9, fire, reload, and now the next fight I get into, I'll have ready that third fast reload. So basically, the next time I reload, I should in theory be in a fight, and that faster reload is going to be very powerful. So oh, he states me again.
Serious trauma detected. Agent out of action.
Yep, status is definitely awful at the moment. It's really bad. It's been needing a nerf for a long time, and too many low-level or low-skill players are just crutching on it, and unfortunately it takes away from the experience of the game. And it's the main reason that a lot of players have left Conflict and have progressed more to the Dark Zone or just stopped playing PvP is exclusively because of status. Never mind though. Never mind. Except we've still got the lead, so I'm not going to win. And that's the lesson to take from this video, boys and girls. Status never wins. Got to be careful because it's probably going to be hiding behind one of these.
Rogue defender drone detected. Immediate assistance.
Wait, did that look like it came from behind us? Stagger on him.
Serious trauma detected.
I believe he's going to kill me though. Need some help from my teammate. Ah!
Agent action.
Wow. Why didn't you help me, team? Yes, he did. It was a little bit late, but he sat back a bit too long there. Okay, safe for us now. Thank you, buddy. Much appreciated. Yeah, I have no issue with Ridgeway's build. You know, they're just there to slow you down, which is absolutely fine.
If the enemy doesn't turn this around, they'll be pulled out.
Wait for that guy to peek and then...
Specialization supply drop has
It's
been
weird.
raised.
So just fight it right past him. Go for the headshots now, we're that close. Oh, look at that.
Immediate medical assistance needed. Rogue explosive signal detected.
No one's retreating. The fight continues. The rogues have run out of reinforcements. We can win. Supply drop is being
Ooh,
claimed
the
by
laser in.
System malfunctioning.
Had to kill him to stop the bird from killing me. So there it is. That's the build. You know, I had a bit of a rough game there because of the abundance of status in the game. And as I say, that is the weakness of the build. If you're not running a booster hive, you're not with a team that's running one, you are going to struggle. But just for the pure usability of the build, those three hallmarks we discussed at the start: survivability, weapon damage, and weapon handling or weapon usability. I feel that I've ticked with all of these. Obviously, the survivability, you know, the only problem with that is status. Let's have a look at the scoreboard, and then we'll bring the video to a close. So we finished on 7 kills, 2 deaths, 4 assists with 36 million damage, which, you know, some of that would have been shield damage, don't get me wrong. Either way, it was a pretty solid game though, so I'm really happy with that. Yeah, it looks like we come up against a low-level conflict team looking at those numbers below, which does explain all the status. It is very much a crutch for new players, but if there's any advice I could offer to new players out there, don't use status. You're going to ruin the experience for everybody. It does not make you a better player because it doesn't improve your aim in any way, as the skills do all the work for you. Check out my PvP builds and guides to help you get some basic, easy to farm builds to put together where you can actually improve your aim, your response time, all the stuff that's important in a PvP environment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you do like the content. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.